What is worse, Machinist or Wooklamat? Oh, wow.
Greetings and welcome to my 7.2 tier list. This time around we got a couple of changes inside of the actual raid tier that this list is mostly connected to, together with some very pleasant changes in the encounter design and enemy selection. Regardless, there's no single reason not to play the job you like the most, as in week 1 already, every job this game has to offer did clear the Savage raid, so nothing to be worried about if you are a hardcore fan of guns and bow harps, for example. Like always, remember that this is my personal opinion and no objectified truth that you should agree on without checking various other sources on the internet, or even better, playing the tier for yourself, finding out which job performs better than others. The most objective data I'm referring to is the one from FFlogs, but even there, things might change over the course of the usual gearing process and how certain jobs scale differently across the multitudes of time spans you could watch this video in. For example, right now Viper and Samurai are crushing the charts massively, as most raiding groups will push over the new gear pieces to those jobs as they benefit the most of a single item upgrade, due to being in the dance partner position or by being amplified by other jobs better than a Dragoon, where their high personal DPS output is the defining factor, of course. So take data with a grain of salt and my opinion with an even bigger grain of salt, and let's get started. Unlike on my other tier lists, I will start with DPS jobs to get the most controversial balancing decisions of Team Yoshida out of the way, right at the start of the video. This means regardless if you like the new Black Mage from its playstyle aspect, there is definitely some serious heft to its DPS performance. As Samurai and Viper players are mostly in favor, it could easily happen that Black Mages follow up as time goes by and they push out tons of raw damage potential into bosses. And with the changes to spell timing and the removal of Umbral Ice and Fire timing, I would go as far as to say it comes 95% close to the flexibility of a Pictomancer and not too close apart from a Red Mage even. A solid A+ spot in my opinion with S tier potential, which cannot really be said about Summoner or Red Mage. They are indeed useful for proc, and if the other teammates come in with high damage values, you will definitely clear the tier without difficulties coming from the jobs. But numerically they are still falling behind, especially when Pictomancer is on a decent lead and Black Mage is basically in another tier in comparison. If Summoner would have its dot system in place, it would be god tier for M6S, but that's just not the case anymore, and the massive AoE burst doesn't necessarily work into the newly added add phases, where Pictomancer or other jobs can simply play out their trump cards easily and with better rotational planning ahead, because Summoner is stuck with the strict rails of 2-minute windows. Red Mage on the other hand kinda suffering from the same issue, with the raising tax diminishing its damage and also not offering the heavy AoE flags for whenever it's needed. So I guess I would place them on A- just because they still fall behind all melees technically. Though you have to keep in mind that groups are still sticking to the usual pattern, mostly 4-5% buff, limit break, and how placing 6 melees in close quarters can be difficult. But quite in between the lines we have a significant change in power, which can be seen on the Pictomancer. Many people considered it to be the pinnacle of Dawntrail, and it had been this way for the last patches, so Square needed to adjust it, and they finally did it. Would I see it in between Red Mage, Summoner and the melees? Yes, actually that is where it belongs in my opinion. Maybe due to the changes to Black Mage there's a slight heap and some room for improvement, as they are basically played in the same way now, but overall it is a fine adjustment I'm definitely agreeing to. It still doesn't bring a raise to the table, but among the casting jobs it's absolutely fine, and I would grant it the A spot here. A+ if you take Ultimate into consideration, but that might just come from the fact those people who cleared it recently still got their Pictomancer strat in place and haven't tried out Black Mage instead. Anyways, the melee roster looks kinda fine again, but the Viper takes a mild lead over its competition. Like I said, Samurai and Viper are the favorite targets to earn the first pieces of gear due to their heavy self-inflicted DPS enhanced by bards and dancers like no other jobs would. So you could probably grant it an S-rank position, but this could shift over the course of the next patches, especially as jobs like Dragoon tend to catch up over time. And when those lines are so close together, as long as the defensive toolkits don't change, I would highly suggest to play any of these melee jobs in favor of how you like them. For example, comparing the Ninja with its slight fall off, which looks massive compared to a Monk, in a simple numeric comparison this is barely a 3%, the absolute best of the best. So in general, the usual player clearing Savage might end up on the exact same DPS number, no matter if you're going in with a Monk or Ninja. So we're taking Monk on A+ and Ninja on A, but like I said, this can shift quickly and you can easily choose both without seeing a difference at all. And the same can be said about Dragoon, Samurai, Reaper and Viper. Just like always, if you love seeing the factual big number in your mathematician tool, Samurai and Viper are the way to go. And Viper being the king of this patch, with the benefit of the doubt, I shall grant it our first S-rank spot here. But Samurai is following very closely on A+, and Reaper and Dragoon are still on the same rank, just with more supportive damage than personal raw power. Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room, shall we? While Dancer and Bard seem to keep their spirit alive with all the new AoE potential in M6S, Machinist got a big L this patch and falls short on the last position, and even on A DPS, where it should at least perform on the level of Pictomancer, it falls short and comes way too close to Red Mage and Summoner. I mean, it's still not bad per se, but it's just feeling annoying to acknowledge that you're going to fall behind even with good gear, that a solid Summoner could swing in the same amount of damage while buffing others and while having raising capabilities. It's a sad season for a man with a machine gun, and it seems to be continuing in the same way as before, but worse. I mean, they were kinda going into the right direction. But again, the saddest B note, which Square should definitely take a look at again, hopefully with the impactful buff we always wished for since the beginning of Dawntrail. If you like the job, you can still clear any form of content with it, but a Black Mage or Pictomancer might find it easier this time around. Dancer and Bard seem to do a bit better, but it bores me to still see that annoying ranged physical or caster tax, which unfortunately indicates this game is not going to make some serious changes to the tedious old formula. I mean, the raid is nice and re-innovated some cool mechanics from times before Stormblood even, but when it comes to gear, class identity and innovation in general, the game needs to do better, even if balancing would take a big hit for some weeks. However, these two supporters are still fine and played by many first week clear groups, so don't hesitate to pick them. A- for these. When it comes to tanks, there's not much to talk about that hasn't been mentioned in the last tier list or by experienced veterans like Xeno or Happy. We see a Gunbreaker being buffed while already having the lead on that aspect, Warrior and Paladin still wearing the best defensive kit, and Dark Knight creeping up to a point it doesn't fall too short, so that's actually quite fine on the tanking side of life. But the devil's in the details, right? So a trend towards Paladin can definitely be seen here, with a massive 7 to 10k more passes than on the other jobs. Which means regardless of the numbers, choose the one you like the most for its playstyle. And if your group is lacking some DPS output, go for Gunbreaker. So S tier for Squall and his friends and A+ for the rest. If you're very critical, Dark Knight could potentially move downwards to A, but I personally do like TBN and Living Dead, even though they might fall short compared to the competition in the one or the other scenario. When it comes to healers, Scholar might be the big winner of this patch due to how useful Expedient can be for M8S and other bosses too. There's lots of fast movement involved this time around, and this aspect is much easier when having a Scholar in your party. On top of that, shield healers are naturally killing it on HPS as well. And while Scholar being among the most technical refined jobs, there's still some heft to its toolkit that only Sage or Astrologian can accompany. Astrologian again taking the massive DPS lead due to how its buffs scale with our big boy Viper, Samurai and even Black Mage. But White Mage follows behind very closely, and its ease of use healing kit can be a blessing for tricky situations. So all that combined into rankings and spots, I would grant Scholar the highest position on A, and for the first weeks in how the DPS statistics are presented, all others on A+. Literally every healer has one argument for it, so choose your favorite according to personal preference, and Scholar for maxing out your group's movement flexibility. Alright, I know these tier lists are super subjective, so feel free to criticize my opinions and statements, and let me know your own thoughts and placements inside the comment section. Apart from Machinist and the antiquated ranged and caster tags, except for the Black Mage, and for Pictomancer and all patches before 7.2, the balancing is top tier again, and minor adjustments could make it nearly perfect. So be vocal about these issues, and Square might adjust them sooner than later. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe, stay healthy and keep loving Final Fantasy.